This podcast is a proud member of the Unidentified Network.
On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
Well, Hannes, in this episode, we go up to Loch Ness in the company of our old friend Ian Squibbs. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs, and welcome to another episode of On What? What's happening over there? I really don't understand this.
Ken, what have you been up to?
Well, Barry, today I murdered Humble off play school with a garden rake. I smashed a bloody stilly head in with it.
I really don't understand the hatred that Richard and apparently many other people have for a doll that hasn't been seen on children's television for something like 40 years. However, no doubt they have their reasons. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and this young man here is Archie, the CFZ dog. I thought I'd better show him to you because he is in a barky mood today, and every time anybody walks past my window he starts barking. And this is most annoying when you're trying to keep continuity going while making a popular televisual programme like this. My name is John Downs, and welcome to another episode of On the Track. For those of you who don't know, and I hope that there's quite a few of you who don't know, because that means you're all newbies and our organisation and our viewing public is growing daily, which is always a very nice thing. For those of you who don't know, On the Track is a show which comes out twice a week at 6:30 on Wednesdays for about a quarter of an hour, and at 3 o'clock on Saturdays for about twice that, and it covers a mixture of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's surreality, you might ask?
I don't know what you're asking me for. I got no idea. I think it's probably something to do with the cats.
Before we go any further with this show, I just want to say that this episode is dedicated to the memory of my old friend Steve Harley, singer with a band called Cockney Rebel, of whom you might have heard, who died a couple of weeks ago. He and I worked together for some years in the early 90s, and although things didn't end well between us, I always respected him, and I think in his own weird way he always respected me. As I wrote in one of my more bilious songs, some things you did were wonderful and other things were shite. But if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be standing on this stage tonight. And if it wasn't for you, Steve, I probably wouldn't be sitting in front of this camera making this episode of a silly web TV show. Thank you for everything you taught me, and bless you, old friend, on the next stage of your journey. Now, this episode is about Loch Ness, and as always, or as nearly always, when we talk about things to do with Loch Ness or other parts of Scotland or lake monsters in the British Isles, we go over to an interview that I completed a couple of days ago with our old friend Ian Squibbs. I didn't realise it was the first time all year that you and I have spoken. Ian, I'm so sorry, and a happy new year to you, old friend. Now, What are we talking about today?
Well, John, it's been a while, but it's good to be back on CFZ as we take another peek at the peculiar and the perverse. So, today, we're going to travel back in time a few months to 1923, when a new Loch Ness documentary hit our screens and is currently available on BBC iPlayer. I myself wrote a review of the documentary for John's Gonzo magazine. So what we'll do now is go through what I wrote about the program. So here we go. In November 2023, Loch Ness created a monster. A new Loch Ness documentary premiered at the Inverness Film Festival and has since been available on BBC iPlayer. It was directed by Scottish documentary maker John McLaverty and has a runtime of 91 minutes. Over the years, documentaries about the Loch Ness mystery have been done to death. The conclusion of them all is that after almost a century of extensive searching, there is still no monster. With this in mind, the monster persists and visitors flock to the loch because of the monster, making millions for the local economy each year. Rather than going through the history of sightings and suspect photos of the monster, Loch Ness, They Created a Monster, focuses on the people into the loch, mainly in the 1970s, and in methods to search for the creature. For some reason, the 1970s was a boom time for monster hunting, drawing all manner of eccentrics from around the globe to the loch in search of the elusive prize. The documentary draws on the extensive amount of footage of these monster hunters available from the period. In fact, approximately 80% of the film consists of archive TV programs of the day, such as Blue Peter, Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, and John Craven's Newsround. That starts off in London, 1975, with footage of patent lawyer come monster hunter Robert Rhines presenting his much disputed underwater Loch Ness Monster to a packed press conference and proclaiming that the Loch Ness Monster is the 10th wonder of the world. A montage of archive footage of expeditions to the loch from the time follows, under the statement. In the 90s, expeditions came from all over the world and trained their lenses on Loch Ness. This film turns the camera around to tell the real story of the monster hunters. No sooner are the opening credits over, the focus falls upon infamous hoaxer Frank Searle, and we find ourselves in modern day. Yes, he's a man. He's a man in modern day Belgium. A lady the name of Lieve Peaton, a former girlfriend of Frank's, tells him living in a caravan on the shore of the loch with Frank in pursuit of the monster. This is interspersed with an actor playing the part of providing a additional commentary, as well as actual footage of Frank in his Loch Ness encampment taken at the time. The film then moves to present-day Loch Ness and a time of stuffed toys, tea towels, and fridge magnets. Hordes of tourists in the present day are board coach tour, being welcomed by a young Scottish tour guide. We follow this coach party throughout the film, cleverly using the tour guide's commentary as one of telling the story. Then we have the appearance of a party of monster hunters who came from Japan to the loch, led by music and boxing promoter Yoshio Ko. An expedition funded by Sony, Panasonic, and Honda. The team used a fishing ship and capture the monster, and if successful, then Yoshio intended to take Nessie around the world and show her off King Kong style. Started in New York, then London, Moscow, and Beijing. After a year and a half, the Japanese expedition left the loch with no monster, and it later transpired that the crew would go drinking every day, The chief sonar operator was a cabaret singer, and the oceanographer was the star of a sitcom. The story of Tim Dinsdale is told. In 1961, Tim filmed an object purported to be the monster. Tim spent the rest of his life searching for the monster, but was unable to get any more film of the creature. Tim's son, discusses his late father's famous film and his disappointment at how little detail there was on the footage. The efforts of the Investigation Bureau are covered. The Bureau was formed in the 1960s from volunteers that roughly fell into two categories: the wartime veterans who were bored with life, and the student hippie types who wanted to challenge authority. The volunteering caravans on the shore of the loch, and their approach to the mystery was, if they watched the loch 24 hours a day, then how could they miss it? But did, and found no evidence for the monster. The film generally takes a skeptical view of the subject, and there is footage of Dr. John Sheetrell History Museum, who seems to be in a frustrated mood. He points out that there is a complete lack of tangible evidence, stating that what we're seeing is a mixture of rotting vegetable material, logs, tree stumps, tree roots, and objects and animals, possibly distorted by mirage effects, rather than a large predatory reptile. This is followed by interview footage with monster hunters, including Tim Dinsdale, who are discussing the results from their efforts. And from what they say, it starts to print that they are probably wasting their time. And you start to feel a level of sympathy for them. Then on to American lawyer Robert Ryan, Academy of Applied Science. Ryan's embarked on expeditions using underwater photography and sonar. And he proclaimed that if Ness a murder case, then there would have been a hanging a long time ago. The results of Ryan's efforts were the image of what was thought as flippers caught on film. In the years that follows, Ryan's returned to the loch, producing more grainy, indistinguishable underwater photos of the monster. It turned out that the photos were nothing more than images of the bottom of the loch, computer enhanced to make them look like something else. The Academy of Applied Science that Rines was representing appeared not to exist, run from the apartment where he lived. The film frequently returns to Frank Searle and his amazing photos of the monster. More time is devoted to Frank than any other of the monster hunters, charting his arrival at the loch in 1969, his fake photos, his numerous girl Fridays, as he called them, and his feuding with other monster hunters, up until his departure from the loch in 1983. Interestingly, his girl Friday, Liv Peaton, discusses Frank's monster photos, and she does not believe that they are fakes, and she believes that they are real photos of the Loch Ness Monster. It's safe to say that the makers of the documentary saw Frank Searle as the star of the, and he is. Amongst all this, the documentary still manages to include footage of classic monster witnesses like Loch Ness water bailiff Alex and St. Augustus monk Father Gregory. You get to see footage of naturalists Peter Scott and David Attenborough speaking in favour of the existence of an unknown, and monster hunting techniques employed, such as submarines, a gyrocopter, and even dolphins brought to the loch to chase Nessie, one of which died in transit. Present-day Loch Ness researchers Adrian Shine, Dick Rayner, Steve Feltham, and Ronald Watson give their input, which helps to tell the tale, as does skeptic Darren Nash. To sum up, the documentary takes a look at the Loch Ness mystery from a completely different angle. And the amount of archive footage on display is amazing. There isn't a dull moment in its 91-minute runtime. The documentary concludes with the various monster hunters featured and confirms that ultimately they have all failed. If anything, they have proved that there is no monster, but have since become important players in the history of fringe science. Loch Ness Monster is a must-see for believers and skeptics alike. So there we go. That was my review, which appeared in John's Gonzo magazine the other month, giving a positive view of the programme. But John, you saw it, make of the documentary.
I thought it was great fun. I enjoyed it massively. And it was nice to see some of the clips that I'd read about but never actually seen before. And there were a lot of clips there's some clips I didn't even know about. So from a sort of historical point of view and from a sort of stamp collecting point of view, to be able to fill in the gaps in my knowledge and my experience, I thought it was fantastic. Unfortunately, it does, as you say, underline the fact that there's really actually no need for there to be a Loch Ness Monster. Prosaic, dare I say, dull explanations can cover everything. But Frank was the star.
Yes.
Frank was the star of the show. Like it says in the Spinal Tap movie, no one has lived and loved like Frank.
It is. What was your favourite part?
Frank's girlfriend moving out when Frank tries to get her into a threesome. I think that was one of my...
All in his caravan as well.
And the reconstruction of the petrol bombing.
Yes. So marks out of 10, John, what would you give the documentary?
I think, now, as a cryptozoological documentary, it's 10 out of 10, because most cryptozoological documentaries aren't very good. As a historical documentary, probably 8 out of 10, because it is bloody excellent.
It is.
And it's really hard to fault it.
Yes. Good marks there. I myself thoroughly enjoyed it. And there was so much footage I hadn't seen. And it was so refreshing to see a Loch Ness documentary that isn't directly about the monster. Heavy on archive footage. I didn't know there was that much available. It must have gone to extremes to locate it all. And this, combined with present-day comment from those who are still alive, made it fascinating. Chinese music unboxing promoter Joshua Ko makes an appearance, and we can see in the picture there, he's with Muhammad. And the filmmakers catch up with the now 86-year-old Ko, and he now cuts a mellowed figure who speaks for his time in Loch Ness. The tale of the most dedicated Loch Ness monster hunter, Tim Dinsdale, is covered, and the film that he took of the creature. Tim no longer appears for comment, and though that was good viewing, disappointing for me, because if you remember, I approached Tim's daughter to a CFZ TV last year, only to be turned down. So that's a bit out of order, isn't it? So, there were 2 clips. One was from the Michael Parkinson show, where he said they could well be an unknown animal waiting to be discovered in Loch Ness. And there was another, which from what it looked like was a documentary he did in the 70s, Monster. I may be mistaken, but I think that the clip may be from a series he did for children's TV called Fabulous Animals. I don't know if you remember that program. I remember watching Fabulous Animals as an infant on our black and white TV, and I'm sure that exposure to cryptozoology, and I was gripped all those years ago.
I don't remember seeing it, but I have read the book that accompanied the series, and I know Richard Freeman waxes lyrical about the series.
Yes, I can remember seeing the stills from the Patterson film on there as well. That was my first view of that. But I've looked at Fabulous Animals, and I can't find it anywhere. So it doesn't seem to be available from what I thought, but seeing that gives available. So if anyone out there knows where fabulous animals can be seen, then let us know. Anyway, so it's worth noting, of course, that Frank Searle gets in time than anyone else, and at times you'd be forgiven for thinking that you were watching the Frank Searle story, because in many ways you are, which isn't a bad thing. See, I got a photo there of Frank. If we have a look at that, he's up to no good. And we've noticed in the past that we've fallen under Frank's spell, and it looks like the filmmakers did too. And it says a lot about what happened to the misinteresting thing about it these days is a guy with one leg who went there in the 70s, lived in a caravan with a succession of women who were young enough to be his daughter, produced the most ridiculous fake photos of the monster, fell out with everyone, vandalized Urquhart Castle, a nervous breakdown, threw a petrol bomb at other monster hunters. But to be honest, though, when you look at all that, you've got a good story. And for the count, one of Frank's girlfriends, Liv Peaton, to take part in the film was a masterstroke. Though I have seen her before on the Frank Searle, and we can see a picture of Liv there. There she is. That's Frank's ex-girlfriend. So, after the question we're left with is, what is it that fascinates us so much? I've thought about this and come up with some conclusions. You know, John, me the same. We're both working class boys, come from nothing and made good. And when you look at the other monster hunters, Dinsdale, they're both well-spoken chaps, clearly went to a good school, not the local comprehensive like us. Robert Rhines, he had more money than sent and must have had a few quid. Frank Searle was none of that. He was working class, like us, John. He came from the street, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. Frank went to the loch to find the monster and ended up making a mockery of the mystery. He was a sex maniac who was in it for his own personal gain, and approach ultimately led to his own mental decline. We are drawn to Loch Ness because of the monster, but as we look more into the subject, you come across the fascinating who gave up their lives to unsuccessfully pursue the monster. But years later, with no monster, we are finding Frank Searle one of the most fascinating things about Loch Ness. My favourite of film, though, in the documentary, is of a young Adrian Shine flicking his cigarette butt into the water just before he gets into his isolation chamber. Not very good for the environment, but it was the 70s and everyone smoked in those days. So, in conclusion, I see the programme as a statement of where we are with the mystery. After almost 100 years, we have no monster. So where do we go from here? Well, the monster is now only a small part of the Loch Ness story. And we have 100 years of events that have made the mystery. So there we have a rundown of Loch Ness. They created a monster, a truly fascinating watch. Now, my only criticism is one of the narrative techniques is in the form of the tourist coach going around the loch with the tour guide providing a commentary, which is a good idea. However, I think the tour guide was an actress, and I found the way she talked quite annoying. But apart from that, it was superb, and I will give it 9 out of 10. If it wasn't for the tour, 10 out of 10. So, I did check, and it's still on BBC iPlayer, so check it out if you haven't done so already. There we go. Thank you very much.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, says,
don't forget to ring the notification bell, otherwise you'll miss the new episodes.
And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
if you've been affected by any of the topics in today's episode, you can just bugger off, because we don't give a monkeys. Bloody well get a grip. Sort your own bloody problems out rather than ringing up somewhere.
Well, that's about it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I do apologise for the fact that Zoom glitched out continually all the way through my conversation with Ian. Richard and Freeman and I viewed the footage and we thought that it was okay, because I don't think there's anywhere that we don't know that you can't understand exactly what Ian was saying. And Ian was so interesting and it was such a nice performance, we decided to keep it rather than risk doing it all over again. I want to say a very big thank you to the people but for whom this episode would not have happened. My special guest this week, who has been Ian Squibbs, and we also have guest appearances by Richard Freeman and V. McQuillan, and I want to say a big thank you to my producer Louis, who, despite the fact he's still gallivanting around the colonies, was particularly useful this episode by troubleshooting some stupid problems that I got myself into remotely, and is still someone without whom we wouldn't be able to do the show. So thank you very, very much indeed, Louis. I don't know what I'd do without you. I'd like to say a big thank you to two other people. To Graham Inglis, the Deputy Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology and also my carer. He's the guy who gets me out of bed in the mornings, puts me to bed at night and takes me to the hospital and back, and all sorts of other things. And I want to say a big thank you to Gwyn Palmer, the Assistant Director of the CFZ, who does all sorts of fantastic things, and without him we truly wouldn't be able to do what we do. I'd also like to send my love and best wishes to Brian Beach, who is the husband of our very own Miss Judy, who's very ill at the moment. I hope you get better again soon, mate. We are all praying for you and rooting for you. And I'd like to send my love to Miss Katie, all the way over in the colonies once again, one of whose beloved cats has just passed over to the other side. I'm going to be back on Wednesday. What am I talking about on Wednesday? Giant tortoises, I think. I can't actually remember because I don't do these things sequentially, and I really am a silly old man. But, Mr. McCrimmon, are you going to be watching the show next Saturday when we're back here talking about Bigfoot sightings, Mr. McCrimmon? Because if you are, I'm going to be here doing the live chat and the notifications and all the other stuff that I do each week. And if you're there watching it, I'm going to be seeing you.